Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! Kaylee stood motionless in front of the full-length mirror, her eyes scrutinizing every inch of her reflection. 2 weeks had passed since she'd started hormone therapy, and the anticipation of visible changes consumed her thoughts. Her fingers traced the contours of her face, searching for any hint of softness or femininity that wasn't there before. The same angular jawline stared back at her, unchanged and unyielding. A sigh escaped her lips as she ran her hands down her chest, still flat and decidedly masculine. "Come on, body. Work with me here," she whispered, her voice tinged with frustration. Kaylee's gaze dropped to her arms, examining the skin closely. There was a subtle difference in texture, a softness that hadn't been there before. It was barely noticeable, but it was something. She clung to that small victory, desperate for any sign of progress. The sound of her roommate shuffling around in the kitchen broke her concentration. Kaylee glanced at the clock and realized she'd been standing there for nearly an hour. Time seemed to slip away when she was lost in her own reflection, caught between hope and disappointment. She turned away from the mirror, unable to bear the sight of her unchanged body any longer. As she moved to get dressed, her hand brushed against the silky fabric of her favorite blouse hanging in the closet. The touch sent a small shiver through her, a reminder of the comfort she found in expressing her true self. Later that evening, after her roommate had left for a night shift, Kaylee found herself once again drawn to her closet. She pulled out the blouse, along with a flowing skirt and a pair of low heels. The ritual of dressing in clothes that matched her identity had always brought a sense of peace, but tonight it felt different. As she slipped the blouse over her head, the fabric seemed to caress her skin in a new way. The softness she'd noticed earlier amplified the sensation, making the garment feel like a second skin. Kaylee smoothed her hands down the front of the blouse, marveling at how natural it felt. "This is different," she murmured, a small smile tugging at her lips. The skirt followed, its hem brushing against her legs in a way that sent tingles up her spine. Even the act of stepping into her heels felt more right than it ever had before. Kaylee took a deep breath, savoring the moment of alignment between her outer appearance and inner self. She made her way back to the mirror, this time with a mix of excitement and trepidation. The reflection that greeted her was familiar, the same face, the same body shape. But something had shifted. It wasn't anything she could point to definitively, but there was an intangible rightness to the image before her. Kaylee twirled slowly, watching the skirt flare out around her legs. The movement felt more fluid, more natural than it had just 2 weeks ago. She couldn't explain it, but it was as if her body was finally starting to catch up with her mind. A knock at the door startled her out of her reverie. Kaylee froze, her heart racing. She wasn't expecting anyone, and the thought of being seen like this by an unexpected visitor sent a wave of panic through her. "Kaylee? You in there?" It was her friend Alex's voice, muffled through the door. Kaylee's mind raced. Alex knew about her transition, had been supportive from the start, but seeing her fully dressed up was a different matter. She hesitated, torn between hiding and facing this moment head-on. "Just a second!" she called out, her voice cracking slightly. Taking a deep breath, Kaylee made her decision. She walked to the door, each step in her heels echoing in the quiet apartment. Her hand trembled as she reached for the doorknob, but she steeled herself and pulled it open. Alex stood in the hallway, a bag of takeout in one hand and a concerned expression on their face. Their eyes widened as they took in Kaylee's appearance, a moment of surprise quickly replaced by a warm smile.
"Wow, Kaylee, you look amazing,"
Alex said, their voice filled with genuine admiration. The sincerity in Alex's words hit Kaylee like a wave. Suddenly, without warning, tears welled up in her eyes. She blinked rapidly, trying to hold them back, but it was useless. The floodgates had opened. "I'm sorry," Kaylee choked out, wiping at her eyes. "I don't know why I'm crying. This is so embarrassing." Alex stepped inside, setting the food down on a nearby table. Without hesitation, they wrapped Kaylee in a tight hug. The gesture of acceptance and support only made Kaylee cry harder, but there was a catharsis in the tears that she hadn't expected. "Hey, it's okay," Alex soothed, rubbing Kaylee's back. "This is a big deal. You're allowed to feel emotional about it." Kaylee pulled back, sniffling and attempting to regain her composure. "It's not just this. Everything's been making me cry lately. A commercial about puppies had me sobbing yesterday." Alex chuckled softly. "Welcome to the wonderful world of estrogen, my friend. Buckle up, it's going to be a wild ride." The lightness in Alex's tone helped ease some of the tension. Kaylee managed a watery smile, grateful for the understanding and lack of judgment.
"I brought your favorite curry,"
Alex said, gesturing to the forgotten takeout. "Want to eat and talk about it?" Kaylee nodded, relief washing over her. "That sounds perfect. Let me just change into something more comfortable." As she turned to head back to her room, Alex's voice stopped her. "You don't have to change if you don't want to. You really do look great, Kaylee." The compliment warmed her from the inside out. Kaylee hesitated for a moment, then decided to stay as she was. It felt right, and for once she wanted to embrace that feeling fully. They settled on the couch, the aroma of spices filling the air as they opened the containers of food. Kaylee tucked her legs underneath her, careful not to wrinkle her skirt. The normalcy of sharing a meal with a friend while dressed as her true self felt surreal and wonderful all at once.
"So,
"How's the hormone therapy going?" Alex asked, between bites of naan bread. Kaylee sighed, twirling her fork in the curry. "Honestly, it's frustrating. I know it takes time, but I was hoping to see more changes by now. My skin feels a little different, but that's about it." Alex nodded sympathetically. "It's a marathon, not a sprint, right? But even small changes are progress." "I guess," Kaylee conceded. "It's just hard when I look in the mirror and still see him." The admission hung in the air between them. Alex reached out, placing a comforting hand on Kaylee's arm. "I know it's tough, but try to be patient with yourself. You're on the right path, and every day brings you closer to who you really are." Kaylee felt the sting of tears again, but managed to hold them back this time. "Thanks, Alex. I don't know what I'd do without your support." They continued eating, the conversation shifting to lighter topics. Alex regaled Kaylee with stories from their job at the local bookstore, describing eccentric customers and bizarre requests. The laughter that bubbled up from Kaylee's chest felt freer somehow, as if the act of being herself had unlocked a new level of joy. As the evening wore on, Kaylee found herself opening up more about the emotional changes she'd been experiencing. She described the intensity of her reactions to things that had never affected her before, the way music seemed to touch her soul in a new way. "It's like everything is in Technicolor now," she explained, gesturing expansively. "Songs I've heard 100 times suddenly have new meaning. I cried over a sunset the other day. A sunset, Alex!" Alex grinned, clearly amused by Kaylee's animated description. Sounds like you're experiencing the world through new eyes. Or new hormones, I guess. Kaylee laughed, the sound light and genuine. It's overwhelming sometimes, but I kind of love it. It feels right, you know? Like this is how I was always meant to experience things. The admission felt powerful, a testament to the rightness of her journey despite the challenges. Alex's expression softened, a mix of pride and affection evident in their eyes. I'm so happy for you, Kaylee. You deserve to feel this way all the time. The sincerity in Alex's words sparked another wave of emotion in Kaylee. This time, she didn't try to fight it. She let the tears come, a smile on her face even as they rolled down her cheeks. Look at me, crying again, she said with a watery chuckle. I'm going to have to start carrying tissues everywhere. Alex laughed, reaching for a napkin and offering it to Kaylee. Never leave home without them. It's like rule number 1 of the Emotional Roller Coaster Club. As Kaylee dabbed at her eyes, careful not to smudge her mascara, a thought occurred to her. Hey, Alex, would you maybe want to go shopping with me this weekend? I could use some help building my wardrobe, and I'd feel more comfortable with a friend there. Alex's face lit up. Are you kidding? I'd love to. We'll make a day of it. Lunch, shopping, maybe even get our nails done if you're up for it. The enthusiasm in Alex's response filled Kaylee with warmth. The prospect of venturing out, of actively building her new identity in the world, was both thrilling and terrifying. But with Alex by her side, it felt possible. That sounds amazing, Kaylee said, her voice filled with gratitude and excitement. As the night drew to a close and Alex prepared to leave, Kaylee found herself reflecting on the evening. The initial fear of being seen, the unexpected tears, the laughter and support, it all coalesced into a feeling of progress. It might not have been the physical changes she'd been hoping for, but it was growth nonetheless. Standing in the doorway, Kaylee hugged Alex tightly. Thank you for tonight. For everything. Alex squeezed back. Anytime, Kaylee.
I'm here for you, every step of the way.
After Alex left, Kaylee returned to the mirror. The reflection that greeted her was the same one she'd scrutinized that morning, but her perception had shifted. She saw potential now, the promise of change and growth. Her body might not have caught up yet, but her spirit was soaring. Kaylee ran her hands over the silky blouse once more, savoring the sensation against her softening skin. It was a small change, barely perceptible to anyone else, but to her, it was everything. It was hope, made tangible. Baby steps, she whispered to her reflection. We'll get there. As she prepared for bed, Kaylee felt a sense of peace settle over her. The journey ahead was long, and there would undoubtedly be more tears, more frustrations. But there would also be joy, discovery, and moments of pure authenticity. She was becoming herself, one day at a time. Lying in bed, Kaylee allowed her mind to wander, imagining the shopping trip with Alex. The thought of trying on clothes in a store still made her nervous, but the excitement outweighed the fear. She pictured herself emerging from a dressing room in a beautiful dress, Alex's encouraging smile greeting her. The image brought a soft smile to her lips as she drifted off to sleep. The next morning, Kaylee woke to sunlight streaming through her window. As consciousness slowly returned, she became aware of a subtle difference. The sheets against her skin felt softer, more luxurious than ever before. It was as if her nerve endings had been fine-tuned overnight, heightening every sensation. She stretched languidly, relishing the feel of the fabric against her body. It was another small change, but it filled her with a sense of wonder. Her body was changing, slowly but surely, aligning itself with her true identity. Kaylee sat up, running her hands through her hair. It felt different too. Softer, perhaps a touch fuller. She made a mental note to ask her doctor about potential effects on hair growth at her next appointment. Every little change was a victory to be celebrated. As she went about her morning routine, Kaylee found herself paying closer attention to the sensations around her. The warm water of the shower seemed to caress her skin in a new way. The scent of her shampoo felt more vibrant, filling her senses with a rich, floral aroma. Standing in front of the bathroom mirror, towel wrapped around her body, Kaylee took a deep breath. She allowed the towel to drop, forcing herself to look at her reflection without the shield of fabric or carefully chosen clothing. Her body hadn't changed dramatically overnight, of course. The same masculine features that had always caused her dysphoria were still present. But there was something different in the way she held herself. A newfound confidence that seemed to radiate from within. "You've got this," she told her reflection, her voice steady and determined. As she dressed for the day, choosing a soft sweater and comfortable jeans, Kaylee's phone buzzed with a text from Alex. "Hey, sunshine! Just wanted to check in after last night. How are you feeling?" The simple act of concern from her friend brought a smile to Kaylee's face. She typed out a reply, her fingers flying over the keys. "Much better, thanks to you. Still feeling emotional, but in a good way. Can't wait for our shopping trip." Alex's response came quickly. "Me neither. We're going to rock this weekend. Prepare yourself for a fashion extravaganza." Kaylee laughed out loud, the sound echoing in her small apartment. The joy she felt was pure and unrestrained, a far cry from the frustration that had plagued her just yesterday morning. As she made her way to the kitchen to prepare breakfast, Kaylee found herself humming softly. It was a habit she'd never had before, this unconscious expression of contentment. She paused, realizing the significance of the moment. This was happiness. Real, genuine happiness that came from being true to herself. It wasn't dependent on how much her body had changed or how well she passed. It was simply the result of living authentically, surrounded by love and support. Kaylee poured herself a cup of coffee, inhaling the rich aroma deeply. Even this familiar scent seemed more potent, more satisfying than before. She wondered if this heightened sensory experience was a side effect of the hormones or simply a result of being more present in her own body. As she sipped her coffee, Kaylee's gaze fell on a small potted plant on her windowsill. It was a cutting from a friend's garden, given to her as a housewarming gift when she'd moved in. For weeks, it had remained unchanged, neither growing nor withering. But now, Kaylee noticed a tiny green shoot emerging from the soil. It was small, barely visible unless you knew to look for it, but it was there. New growth, reaching towards the light. The symbolism wasn't lost on Kaylee. Like that tiny plant, she was in a period of growth. It might be slow, it might be subtle, but it was happening. Every day brought new changes, new experiences, new ways of being herself. She reached out, gently touching one of the plant's leaves. "Look at us," she murmured, "both becoming who we're meant to be." The rest of the morning passed in a blur of routine tasks and work emails. Kaylee found herself looking forward to the weekend more than ever before. The prospect of shopping with Alex, of actively building her wardrobe and presenting herself to the world as she truly was, filled her with nervous excitement. As lunchtime approached, Kaylee decided to treat herself to a meal at her favorite cafe down the street. It was a small act of self-care, a celebration of the emotional progress she'd made in the past day. The cafe was bustling with the lunch crowd when Kaylee arrived. She joined the queue, her eyes scanning the menu board, even though she already knew her order by heart. The familiar environment felt different somehow, as if she was experiencing it through new eyes. As she waited, Kaylee became acutely aware of the people around her. In the past, she might have felt self-conscious, worried about how others perceived her. But today, she stood tall, secure in herself. When it was her turn to order, Kaylee approached the counter with a smile. The barista, a young woman with vibrant blue hair, greeted her warmly. "What can I get for you today?" she asked, her voice cheerful despite the busy rush. "I'll have the vegetable panini and a vanilla latte, please," Kaylee replied, her own voice clear and confident. As the barista rang up her order, she paused, looking at Kaylee more closely. "I hope this isn't weird, but your skin looks amazing. What's your secret?" The compliment caught Kaylee off guard. She felt a blush creep up her cheeks, a mix of pleasure and surprise flooding through her. "Oh, thank you," she stammered, momentarily flustered. "I've, made some changes to my skincare routine recently." It wasn't entirely a lie, Kaylee reasoned. Hormone therapy was certainly a change, even if it wasn't quite what the barista had in mind. The barista grinned. "Well, whatever you're doing, it's working. You're glowing." As Kaylee moved to the side to wait for her order, she felt a warmth spreading through her chest. It wasn't just the compliment itself, though that was certainly nice. It was the fact that someone had noticed a change, had seen something in her that aligned with how she saw herself. She found a small table by the window, settling in with her food and drink. As she ate, Kaylee found herself people-watching, something she'd always enjoyed, but now felt different. She wasn't comparing herself to others, or wishing she looked different. Instead, she was simply observing, appreciating the diversity of people around her. A group of friends at a nearby table caught her attention. They were laughing, sharing stories over their meals. Kaylee felt a pang of longing, not for their appearance or style, but for their easy camaraderie. She made a mental note to reach out to more of her friends, to nurture those connections that had sometimes fallen by the wayside during the early stages of her transition. As she finished her meal, Kaylee's phone buzzed with another text from Alex. "Hey, quick question. Any color preferences for our shopping trip? Thinking we should have a game plan." Kaylee smiled, touched by Alex's thoughtfulness. She considered the question carefully. In the past, she'd gravitated towards dark, muted colors, clothes that helped her blend in, that didn't draw attention. But now, "I'm feeling brave," she typed back. "Let's go for some color, maybe something in purple or deep red?" Alex's response was immediate and enthusiastic. "Yes, bold choices for a bold woman! I love it!" Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!